At $200, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES.
Only on Super NES.
You're listening to the SNES podcast with your host, Soul Blazer.
Hello, everybody. This is Super NES Podcast, episode number 260. I am Greg. He is Joe, as always.
Hello.
Yes, and we're covering this time an episode just a week after our last recording, as opposed to 2 weeks to get back on schedule here to make up some time. But admittedly, Joe and I did tweak the schedule a little bit to give us easier games to work with for a while, since both of us are still very busy with things. So we are covering, I think, a game that was originally my suggestion. I think we came up with the schedule.
100%.
Yeah. The problem is that by this point in the year, by mid-year, I can never remember who came up with what game at this point, because since we try to organize our lists toward the beginning of the year. Anyway, we're covering a space shooter, like this game. We're covering R-Type 3, officially known by its full title as R-Type 3, The Third Lightning. Which is the second R-Type game of the Super NES, the second game we're covering on this podcast from this franchise, because we already covered Super R-Type, I think like 4 or 5 months ago. I don't remember exactly. I meant to look up when that episode was, and I forgot about that.
Yeah, I didn't even make note of it in my notes, but I did reference that podcast a few times in my summary of this game, so be ready for that.
Right. So anyway, because we've already covered, because we've already covered R-Type in the past, I'm not going to go ahead and spend a lot of time talking about the history of the franchise or like our RAM, the maker of the game, or whatnot. Too much on this. But Joe, if we're going to reference it that much, maybe you should find the episode that we did cover Super R-Type on. I'll give some basic information about the game here, look for that. So R-Type 3, as the name implies, is the third game like the R-Type franchise. The R-Type franchise originally started in 1987 with an arcade game that got ported to various computers and whatnot back then. R-Type 2 got as we covered in the podcast, got remastered and enhanced as Super R-Type for the Super NES, much the same way that Super Ghouls and Ghosts for the Super NES is kind of a reimagined version of the Ghouls and Ghosts arcade game. So R-Type 2 has since been released for modern systems as well as the original games. So you can check out both games, their original arcade glory, if you want to. R-Type 3, however, did not start off life like an arcade game. It was originally, that game was designed from the ground up to be a Super NES game. So that's its advantage. Slight spoiler here, as we'll get into here in a little bit, talking about the game. It came out in Japan December 1993, North America August 1994, Europe later on that year. So mid-life Super NES game. IRM did not have a big publishing house in the West at the time, so Jalico again published the game in North America, so that's the so you have it's this is a side-scrolling shooter game. You either can do single, 1 player, 2 player. There's also an option menu to do things like difficulty settings, number of lives, etc.
Yep. So podcast 230, we covered Super R-Type, and that was March of 2024. So more than a few months ago. Yeah.
Over a year ago then. Okay.
Right.
I hadn't realized it was that, that long ago. So, I do remember however, what we said about the game back then.
Yes.
We pretty much said that, the game was pretty good for being like an early Super NES launch, game. It wasn't it wasn't a launch game, but it was pretty early in the system's life. It's pretty early system lifespan. However, the game does suffer from slowdown issues, very high difficulty, very high difficulty setting, and some other complications with that version of the game. And the arcade version, especially when 1 and 2 are so easily available these days, the arcade version of the game. Like I said, Super R-Type is really just a reimagining of R-Type 2. The arcade version of the game is really the way to go these days. However, as I alluded to, R-Type 3 being benefited from not only being a mid Super NES game where the programmers had figured out how to wring everything out of the system, but being developed from the ground up for the Super NES, both things really pay off strongly for this game's playability and presentation style. So you have your basic space shooting game, 6 stages, boss at the end. You get power-ups by blasting capsules. The R-Type games differentiate themselves from the Gradius games in the sense you have the actual weapons, the actual weapons attached to you in front of the ship. You also can't stockpile capsules like you can in most Gradius games. Use it or lose it situation as far as these go. You have a hyper beam ability that you can use to holding the button to charge shots, that's pretty much it as far as the basic overview. If you go to the game, it's not particularly long. There's a guy online. If you're a fan of shooters at all, there's a guy online called Peg, P-E-G, who does excellent playthroughs of Japanese and American shooters, both space shooters and also like run and gun ground games like Akari Warriors, Commando, that kind of stuff. And he played through the game in about 35 minutes, give or take. So, not a particularly long game if you know what you're doing on this one, but, there is, if you beat the game originally, the game does loop again, harder this time around, which is kind of typical like most games. So, so I really enjoy shooting games. I'm more of a fan of the Gradius series because I grew up that series, but R-Type never has been as popular as Gradius. However, the franchise to this day still has a very passionate fan base. And the R-Type games certainly were groundbreaking in many ways and did do very many things right. So here's a chance to redeem itself after the somewhat lukewarm port or reimagining, whatever you want to call it, to Super R-Type a couple years later. I played this game back then, so if like me, this was going back to the game. Joe, I believe this was your first time playing this game, correct? So
yes.
I'm curious here. Yep. So I'm curious to hear if this game did a better job impressing you than the first game did.
Yeah. So first I want to touch on. You mentioned story. There isn't really much of a story here. It's you blast off and you strike the evil Baido Empire. Mm-hmm. That's it. Like they put that in plain words for you right at the beginning, and that's all the exposition you get. And really, that's all the exposition you need.
Exactly.
This game kind of shakes up the formula a little bit. There's 3 different types of pods that you can get.
Yep.
So you can start off with the Round Force, which is your typical R-Type game. It's the pod that you would have had in Super R-Type and any of the arcade games. There's the Shadow Force, and then there's Cyclone Force. I played with the tried and true Round Force, so I apologize. I can't really speak on the other 2 abilities, but I did see a couple playthroughs, and it does look like it does make a difference. One of the reasons why I stuck with the Round Force the entire time, and one of my gripes for this game, is the fact that you cannot switch, like after levels. There's no switching, so once you commit, you're committed. So it's either you beat the game or you die, one or the other. Other than that, this is R-Type. You collect speed upgrades, missile upgrades. There's floating bits that you can pick up to top off shields and things of that nature. You can charge your shot, as Greg alluded to. I think visually, the game's, I think, better than Super R-Type. I felt this game had a lot more color in it. So I know that's kind of like a different section, but I had to get that out because I was actually impressed with some of the color that we see in this game. Difficulty. This is one of the things. This is why I said I kind of reference that Super R-Type. So here you take a single hit, you're gonna lose a life. You're sent right back to the last checkpoint you reached. This game actually has checkpoints, which for me was the first complaint I had with Super R-Type, was that it was brutally difficult. There is no way to save. There is no mercy. The game just is outright to kill you, and that's it. And that was one of, other than obviously the slowdown, one of the biggest things that I had harped on in that episode. So as Greg also alluded to, there's 6 levels. They're pretty manageable with the checkpoint system. There's still definitely a difficulty curve here. So I don't want to make it sound like, oh my god, I'm suddenly a professional shmup player, because that is not the case. It's definitely, they're going to throw everything at you, from, environmental hazards to enemies that will spawn in all directions, and most of the time directly in your path. But, at least they have those checkpoints, so this way when it does get a little too hectic and you do die, you at least have that option to not have to start all the way at the beginning. So that was really cool. Not having slowdown, I thought, really helped this game. What I also think really helps this game, obviously, being developed strictly for the Super Nintendo, not having to port anything over and can start from scratch. This game moves slow, and I don't mean like, oh my god, it's like not framing the way it should. It's methodical. The screen purposely moves slow so that it gives you time to react to what's on the screen, be able to maneuver around. There are a lot of sections where you're like flying through, whether it be a ship or, environments that are, closing in on you, essentially.
So if I can add on to that, so I agree with you definitely. I agree with you definitely about that. That's pretty good. The action's not as frantic or fast paced. Like I said, people say like a Gradius game. I do think, however, that slowness also is a double-edged sword, because I think the first half of the game is kind of a little bit too slow at parts for my liking. I prefer to be a little bit more busy. I wasn't bored, but there were some parts that there definitely were parts for me in the first 3 stages where it was like, okay, I wish the action was a little bit faster here, but because you're kind of plodding along, like that slower speed. But the second half of the game, though, the action picks up. The action picks up considerably. So it's just that first half of the game that I wish a little bit faster, at least as far as I was concerned.
No, I can definitely agree with that. As far as like other shmups and even Super R-Type, it's definitely a slow burn at the beginning. But like you said, it picks up, and that's the way it should be. I think that maybe not as slow as this one, because the first level should be a little bit of should be a little slow. Maybe the second one speeds it up a little bit, third one speeds it up more, and then by the time you get to the 4th, 5th, and 6th, the throttle's fully pressed to the floor. I really like the way I know, again, this is going into the graphics of the game, but I really like how they implemented Mode 7 in this game.
Yeah.
They did quite a few little things that I thought were great. And I mean, I guess what it comes down to is, and again, this is kind of jumping a bit, but I'm just going to throw it in here because it is part of my review on this thing. All these things are nothing without tight controls, and this game, I well, near perfect. I don't want to say perfect controls because I don't know if the perfect controls exist. But they were fantastic. It was responsive. And again, that goes with, obviously, there's no slowdown, so that's not affecting you. It could be because of the slower pace. But I even felt like in the later levels, the control was just right there with you. Like you know, if I wanted to move up and down, like it was just that simple as that button press. Minute I'm pressing the fire button, it's firing. Like it's doing everything that it should be. And I think that helps a lot with not only obviously gameplay and overall presentation, but it helps redeem itself from what Super R-Type was, which, to be fair, could have been a really fun game, and eventually was, because of course I, pushed up the speed of the ROM, so therefore it played at regular speed, and it was a fun game. But in the mess that it was when it was released is totally different. So here, I feel like they've completely redeemed themselves and gone above and beyond, honestly. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. The graphics of this game are very good. They're not amazing, but then again, this is a shooter. They really don't need to be amazing. It's like, your ship is large and detailed. The enemies are bright and crisp. The backgrounds look nice. Graphically the game, the game looks pretty good. So I can't really complain about anything there. You're right. The controls are very tight. Not having slowdown also really helps with that, because you need tight controls to be able to get through some later parts in the game. But for sure, the music also was pretty good. I think Gradius soundtrack overall was better, but this game is a very good kind of techno rock sounding soundtrack. Soundtrack that's very appropriate to blasting through like biomechanical enemies and inside ships and whatnot as you're playing the game. So yes, very good soundtrack too.
Yeah, and that was one of the other things I wanted to mention, but I wanted to wait till we got to that section. But since you brought it up, that first level, the music there's something very familiar about it, and it could have been used in another R-Type game, for all I know. But it definitely gets the blood pumping and gets you excited to play the game, and it's just what you needed. And then, like I said, with the tight controls and everything else, this game feels great.
Mm-hmm. No, I definitely agree. Yeah. So it's a very fun game. I certainly had a lot of fun with this back in the day. Again, I've always preferred the Gradius series a little bit better. But then, but this game, but the R-Type games are also like a lot of fun. I've been meaning to get the newest game in the series, R-Type Final 3. I just haven't just haven't got around to picking it up. But these are fun games. It's like, and the difference between this game and Super R-Type, or even like Gradius 3, which is another launch game that suffered from slowdown, is like night and day. Because by now, this is during the time period in which some really good shooters are starting to come out to come up with the system. And the system, I think R-Type is probably among the best of that group. Yeah. I don't really have too much. Beyond me saying I thought the first half of the game could have been a bit more faster. I really don't have too much else to criticize or complain about here. I thought your ship could have been a little bit smaller. I think that sometimes the hitbox kind of felt like a little bit unfair in cases, but. But your ship's not massive. There's certainly are games I played where the I play where your ship is too large, really comfortably fit onto the game screen. But that's a relatively minor quibble of mine anyway. So.
Yeah, I can't remember the YouTuber I saw, but he it's called something like The Science of Gaming or something like that, and he talks about the hitboxes and whatnot in certain games. And I think the ship's a good size here. I think the hitbox might be a little too big for the ship, is what I think.
Yeah, maybe that's the way to best to.
Yeah,
that could be the best way to describe it, probably. So.
Yeah, because there were definitely a lot of times where like I was taking hits when I felt like I shouldn't have been. So yeah, I think it's just the hitbox was too big for the model that they had.
Yeah. So, and like Joe said, don't get the idea this game's easy. It's definitely not. It certainly is a hard, but certainly is a hard game. It's easier than Gradius 3 or Super R-Type for sure, but and probably, but it's sort of a good challenge. I think this game's probably best aimed towards somebody who's like a mid-tier skill level as far as shooters go, I think. Yeah. But being able to, three difficulty settings help you to adjust things to your taste anyway. So
yeah. I also wanted to mention that I used the word perfect. I do want you to know that there is some slowdown in this game. It's
little bit,
It's so small that it doesn't even matter. But I felt like I should at least mention that because I felt like I kind of blew up the game a little too much. So we'll bring it down to back to earth a little bit.
Well, the game did review pretty well when it came out. We're not the only ones who were saying like positive things about it.
Yeah.
Even to this day, the aggravator game ranking score for this game is like it was like 82%.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
Back in the day, EGM gave it. EGM gave it like 80%. And computer video games gave 90%. As a matter of fact, EGM actually gave it like best shooter of the year like when it came out. Okay. So the game reviewed pretty well. I don't know what it is. We'll get into eBay pricing here later on, but despite the game reviewing very well, however, I don't know. Sorry, I forgot to mention a couple of things. First of all, the game is actually developed by a company called Temptex, and the reason I skipped over them, I think in my head, is because I couldn't find anything online about that company. They definitely, whoever they were, they had experience programming for programming like the Super NES because it definitely shows.
Yeah.
And also, the box cover alone is pretty good. I think, this was during a time period in which reviews and word of mouth still sold games heavily for the most part. Yeah. So, it's a very impressive box cover for sure. So, not as good as the amazing Konami artwork they use for their games, but, it gets the job done. It's, I noticed this game in the store, in the store back then because the box art, I didn't buy the game, I rented it instead, but, the box art definitely got my attention because it's like, I'm a pretty good shooter game. I'm a pretty big shooter fan. So for me, a weekend rental was fine. Somebody else may decide that that this game was worth the purchase value for it because I did own Gradius 3 and a couple other shooters the system too. But but speaking about like buying it, I don't know if it's because the game just got ignored when it came out. I didn't look to see what other games came out about this. It came out in North America mid '94, but I'm not sure if the game just had a bad time when it came out, or it was a small print run, or a combination of two. But this is a pretty expensive game to get online these days. If you want to buy the actual physical Super NES cart. However, the game has been released several times since then, so you may be maybe more advantageous and or cheaper for you to pick up one of those other versions of the game instead. So, the game first got ported like the GBA years later in 2004. which came out in North America, and Europe. Looking at it online, it looks like a pretty faithful port of the game. So, I think that it probably it looks like it handles the conversion of the GBA like very well.
Yeah, I'm assuming that port is very faithful, just because I've seen prices for the Game Boy Advance cart range anywhere from like $30 to almost $100. So
not quite as bad as Super NES version, but still pretty expensive. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So it's a well sought after cart. So clearly there's a love there for it.
Yeah, right. So the game was available on the game was available on the Wii Virtual Console when service was live. Joe and I were saying before off mic how it's weird certain games get brought over to services,
yeah.
Some don't. Super R-Type's on the Switch these days, but this game's not. Yeah. So it's a very weird decision. However, the game has been released twice in more recent years. Retrobit came out with a special Super NES version of the game in 2018 that included that was on a multi-cart. With R-Type games, as well as standard edition, and also a limited collector's edition. Those sell online for about $200 to $300. So I mean, like, not outrageous considering the fact this was a small print run, and there's a print run, and there's like more than one game included on this. So, and then also if you have the Retrocade. This game was included like among the games on the IREM cartridge that came out for the Retrocade. So,
okay.
So there are R-Type 1 and 2 were also included included on as well. So there are legal ways to buy the game nowadays. If you want to go that route, or you can just emulate it like we did. I mean, honestly, the game's not in production right now anyway. But like I said before, this is proof of the fact that this is proof that IREM's R-Type series does have a pretty passionate fan base. It may not be as big as the Gradius series, but obviously two companies felt there was enough demand out there to release these games again. So, and they did, and the reviews and feedback I've heard both versions are very good. So, you can obtain these without too much expense still online these days if you want to. So that's also like another viable option. And hopefully one day the game will be added to Switch like it should be.
Yeah.
But so Super NES version of the game, however, like I said before, I really don't know if it was just a small print run, didn't get noticed, or a combination of the two, but pretty valuable game to get these days. When you see a game with like reproductions available online, that the actual official copies go for a lot of money. So I knew right away when I saw that I was like, oh boy. But the only saving grace of this, I would say that the cart prices vary wildly. So if you're patient, you can snag one for more of the lower end of the graph here. Whether or not you consider lower end to be worth it depends upon you. But this is all just a preface to say that this game's pretty expensive, but you can save some money if you're willing to be patient and wait for a sale, because there are copies available online for sure. 20 copies were listed on eBay as me doing research on this recently, and 19 copies of the game have recently sold. Cart and CIB are two different stories, but the cart versions, and as always, these prices include shipping for North American located copies only. The cart only versions of this game sold anywhere from $120 to the low end, all the way up all the way up to $280 on the high end. So that's why I said there's a wide range of prices here on the cart. So $200 if you take as an average, you're probably that's probably going to pay for this game if you play on Super NES card. So expensive, not the most expensive Super NES card game I've seen, but it definitely is up there toward like top 25 of things probably. So CIB is of course much more expensive. I could not find any copies of this game that's sold recently on CIB. However, asking prices for CIB online, again, very wildly depending upon the condition of everything and how everything, what's actually included and whatnot. But people were asking anywhere from $450 to $1,000 for this game in CIB format. So I think the 450 to 600 price range sounds fair, based upon what I've seen for the car prices.
Emulate.
Well, the reproductions were $75, which is also kind of pricey, but still not as bad as the official stuff. So, so if you're okay with that, you can get that version of the game for definitely cheaper. So, it's a shame this game is and this is with the fact the game's been released a couple of times recently. So, I guess that just shows the demand for this game that still exists nowadays. I was surprised to see how high the pricing was.
Yeah, that's pretty high, and like you said, I'm pretty sure this game sold pretty well. So kind of surprised, but hey,
Jalco was never a big publisher. Like it may have been, it may have been like a very small print run. For sure. So,
but also it's the Super Nintendo. So like as much as like if you release an RPG for the Super Nintendo, it's guaranteed it's going to be probably pretty pricey. I think we could pretty much say the same for shoot 'em ups as well for the Super Nintendo for the most part.
I mean, also 1994 was also 1994 is probably. Some people would argue 1994 was probably the best year for the Super NES. Period. Because it's because with all these great games that came out this year, it's very possible this game may just went overlooked. Because check out these games that came out in 1994 for Super NES. You've got Super Metroid, Donkey Kong Country, Final Fantasy VI, Super Street Fighter 2, and also. Mortal Kombat 2. So, you got some great games in that list there. So, if the game had come out at a different time, maybe, and shooters always were more of a niche market, I think. I mean, they were, they were popular 30 years ago than they are now.
Right.
But I think that they weren't as popular in the 90s like they were during their heyday in the 80s, I think. So, that may also have been part of it as well. So, but anyway, this is all just that's kind of a long-winded possible explanation for some of the factors that went into this. But, anyway, so definitely a fun game. If you've not played this game and you're a fan of shooters, by all means check it out. Yeah. If you overlooked it for some reason, I wouldn't start with this game. If you're new to the you're new to the franchise, I think some of the more modern titles are more user friendly than this one is. But if your skill is pretty good, this is this game still holds pretty well today. And I was pleasantly surprised going back to playing it again after all these years that that is still I think holding up pretty well today.
Yeah, and I mean I think you can tell by my review. I definitely recommend the game. And this was a fun, refreshing playthrough.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you like it because I've heard this game is better than the original than the first game. So, I should also mention that real quick here. Shooters usually have cheat codes, and this game did include a level select. But it was but for some reason that was Japan only. When the game came over the game, they moved it for some reason when the game came over to the West. Why, I don't know, but there's no codes for this version of the game, unfortunately.
I wonder if the Super Famicom version doesn't have the checkpoints.
That's a good question. I didn't think about that.
Because that would make sense. If we got checkpoints, they remove the level select. You know what I mean? That would make sense.
Well, most shooters have checkpoints. The greatest games have checkpoints. So it's right. I think Super R-Type not having checkpoints was just an anomaly.
Okay.
But Most ground-based games like Metal Slug and Ikari Warriors you also have checkpoints. I think that I think that's just simply that was one of many weird design decisions the Super R-Type had. But we've already bashed that game enough as it was in the past, so we don't need to revisit that topic again. But the R-Type 3 is still thought of very highly today by fans of the franchise. As being one of the better games in the series for sure. So, yeah. Anyway, so as always, we appreciate you tuning into us. As always, next time on the podcast, we're covering another fairly easy game. I've not played this game before. I don't think Joe has either, for that matter. We're going to be looking at the Super NES version of The Incredible Hulk, which I'll have to look into seeing why they decided to make a game during this time. I've never read the comics. I don't know if '94 had a resurgence of the franchise, or the company had a chance to get the license for cheap. So both things have been done in the past. So who knows? I'll have to research it when we get there.
I'm pretty confident Batman '89 is a thing. That caused comic properties to become hot. And while they're, companies obviously making money on the Batman franchise, and Superman franchise at the time, I believe it's just, hey, it's a comic property. Let's make a game and make some money while other people are getting money. Because I can't think of any major event that was happening that would cause that. Because Spider-Man had Maximum Carnage,
right.
Later on and whatnot. That I completely understand. And then they did one for the animated series.
Yeah.
I can't think of any reason
they did crossovers. Yeah, they did crossovers a lot. I remember seeing Hulk show up quite a lot. Spider-Man in the comics.
Yep.
But the first movie didn't come out to the late '90s, I think. Right? When did the first? I think it was
first Spider-Man came out.
Hulk movie. Sorry.
Oh, Hulk movie.
Yeah.
If we're talking Lou Ferrigno and those TV ones, that was in the '80s. But
that's true. Yeah,
the actual cinematic movies for the Hulk did not come out until the 2000s.
Was that late? Okay, all right. Yeah. So,
Spider-Man and X-Men were the first. Fox had X-Men, and I think that was 2000. Was that one?
That sounds about right. Yeah.
And then late 2001, or it was supposed to be July of 2001, was Spider-Man, because I had the trailer with the Twin Towers, and after 9/11, they had to go in and edit that trailer out and remove all the posters. Yep.
Yeah, that I did not know, actually. Huh,
yep,
okay.
That actually pushed that release back. I think that ended up releasing in September, if I remember correctly, but yeah. Yep.
Right. Okay. No, all right. Am I correct? Am I correct in saying that you've not played this game before?
I have not. There is a version for the
Genesis.
Sega Genesis, but I think it is a totally different game.
Okay, all right.
I don't think they're related.
Wasn't the Hulk a playable character in one of the arcade beat 'em ups too?
I don't remember him in the arcade beat 'em ups, but he was definitely part of Marvel vs. Capcom.
That must be what I'm thinking about him from. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And he was also in Gem Warriors or Gem Fighters. It's the
there's a game I've not thought about in a long time.
Yeah, it's like the Secret Wars fighting game, Marvel fighting game for the Super NES.
Yeah.
Which if you have not covered it, we'll get to there. We'll get there. That's a whole thing.
I'm pretty sure we've not. Yes.
Okay. That's a whole thing. So. That's something to look forward to in 2026.
Alrighty then. All right. So as always, everybody, thank you for listening to us. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, suggestions, please feel free to hit us up on Facebook, or you also send me an email directly to the SNESpodcast@yahoo.com. Joe, how can they reach you?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at JOESUX30. I also have a very open Facebook, so warning, not safe for work. Also have the Radical Retro Roundup, which is still breathing. It's got a light pulse. Don't worry, it's coming, I promise. I got a lot of things going on, and I still have yet to even message George about it, and he hasn't messaged me about it, so he doesn't. I won't say he doesn't care, but he knows that like I'm the one driving the ship, so he's kind of like, well, if I don't hear from the captain, I'm not going to bother bringing it up. So we will be getting to that, and of course, as I've said, probably in the past, I think 3 episodes for this show, we're covering Juiced. So that's another thing that's got me kind of held back because I'm still kind of playing that game.
Okay. All right. Well, sounds good. All right, folks. Thank good, everybody out there. Stay safe, be well. We'll catch you again next time. Later, all.
Bye.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man.
Now you're playing with power. Super power.